Welcome to Ideagen TV live from the NASDAQ here in Manhattan. I could not be more thrilled, as you know, to have with me Gretchen O'Hara from Splunk. Gretchen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, George. I love being here and being back. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
You know, Gretchen, changing the world is not easy. And you are one of the people that's changing the world. You have been leading at every career moment that I've seen you operate in. At Microsoft, so many years, changing the world. And now at Splunk. And you've got to read your title correctly, Vice President for Worldwide Channels and Alliances at Splunk. Gretchen, how would you describe your mindset for developing successful partnerships? This is the Global Partnership Summit at the NASDAQ.
No, it's perfect timing. And I think the partnership is key. And George, we've had lots of conversations about this. I mean, fundamentally, no one can go at any problem alone. I mean, we know that it is part of the goals of which we're establishing here today, whether that's public and private partnerships and going after sort of these big global goals and changing that for the better. My perspective is I've been in channels my whole career. And I really believe in the power of partnership. I believe in the power of a force multiplier. And when you can connect in on common goals together and bring multiple perspectives and approach, to the problem, you ultimately see a much higher level of success and accomplishment and continued movement. And I think that, when I look at partnerships, there's kind of, two sets as I think about the business. One is on the commercial side of our business. How do we make sure that we're delighting our customers and solving their business needs? And again, every one of our partners together brings a unique perspective, some unique solution, and together we ultimately can solve those problems in a much better way than if Splunk just went it alone.
Right.
But we now, transition to partnerships like Ideagen, and my commitment to really building out these partnerships like Ideagen, because these are the partnerships that come together and harness essentially all of these global leaders to say, hey, we're going to make a change. We need to make a difference, but I can't do it just alone with myself.
That's right.
Gretchen, I can't do it just with my company, Microsoft,
right,
or in this case, Splunk. How do we bring the best and the brightest together to go accomplish these things together?
Right.
And so I think foundational, both are very important. And I think that when you look at partnerships, for you personally or in the companies that you're at, you need to think about both sides of that. How you continue to drive the business and your business agenda to solve whatever your customers' needs are. But we also have, I think, an obligation and a responsibility to come together to solve some of the biggest challenges that we have here globally. And we cannot do it without the insight, the leadership, and the collective power of us.
Well, what you have been leading on is solutions, and you've dedicated your career to solutions, to making things happen, to showing up ultimately. That's what you've been doing. You show up, and you've done it at Microsoft. Now you're doing it at Splunk, and it's incredible to see the growth of the company and the success of the company and your leadership within that company to change the world. There are elements that we're dealing with globally, that including the digital divide. So we have a digital divide. How do you see that being addressed?
Yeah, I think, so first of all, when you think about digital divide, it is a common challenge that we've been facing for some time. It's not something that's, I would say, is relatively new, but it's something, to your point, that we need to continue to drive a focus on because it keeps inequities across the globe. And so when you think about the digital divide, essentially it comes down to access and digital infrastructure. And we are in a digital world. We can't escape that now.
Right.
I think, the pandemic was a great example, quite frankly, of showing that, we are going to be resilient through our digital engagement. However, as you probably saw across the world, we had learning loss. We had a lot of, access issues. There were communities at large that couldn't even have broadband to essentially connect into a learning curriculum. So it was a shining light, in my opinion, of what we as, I think, corporate citizens and across the globe need to be looking at, which is how do we close that gap so that we can provide more, equitable opportunities sort of across the globe. So, George, when you think about, what you would address, then to your point, I think there's a couple of things. First I'd mentioned is just it's sort of multidimensional. The communities themselves, a lot of rural communities, we certainly see impoverished communities across the globe, just getting core access. So there's connection, like number one. And I think, I know certainly worked out with Microsoft on this and a lot of other partners. How do we bring free or subsidized access in to just start? So that's just kind of the starting point. But there's socioeconomic issues, as you know, and this is where I think, we're doing a lot whether it's impoverished or marginalized communities, how do we help actually make sure that they have the same starting point as everybody else? And today, there's just such a disparity on even knowledge and digital literacy.
Yeah.
So how do we, and one of the things that I've worked on is bringing that digital literacy into the underserved communities so that, again, when we give access, finally, we can have the generation and multi-generation now. This is the first time we've had multi-generation that all is connected into the digital footprint. Wow. So everything from the grandparents all the way down to digital natives are now all thrown in together.
Sure.
So we need to give them access. We need to give them digital literacy skills. We need to make sure that our senior citizens and our children have the ability to be able to communicate, compete and flourish, quite frankly, in the digital world. And so I think about those things, between, geographies, socioeconomic issues, certainly the learning that, I just talked about. And I think that fundamentally what we have to do through our work in our public partnerships with private sector is how do we bring more infrastructure to the areas that really need it?
So what is the inhibitor to that? What is the biggest roadblock that you've seen working with these partners and clients to try to deliver this opportunity, this solution?
Yeah.
Because we talk about solutions. What's
absolutely.
that inhibitor?
Well, I think, kind of coming back to infrastructure, that is one of the biggest challenges. It's quite costly.
Yeah.
It is costly. If you think about this, how do we even build cell packages and internet packages that can actually, underserved communities can even afford.
Yeah.
And so even if we build the infrastructure, the affordability of that is something we have to address as well. And so the two things I think that actionable we should be looking at is continue to build out infrastructure where there is none. And it's hard. And the obstacle is it's remote. We're in a third world. We're in a rural community that we can't get that. I think the technology is catching up to a place where we can make sure that everyone has access if we can provide it. So that's sort of one. And then, of course, the second blocker then to that is once there is access, is it affordable?
Yeah.
So you can get access. Now, can you afford to have that access? And I think this is where the telcos of the world come in. This is where, quite frankly, Microsoft and others come in to say, hey, what are some unique, investments that allow essentially that access that hasn't been there before?
Well, and you're gaining new customers, right?
Absolutely.
By providing that. So there's a business incentive as well to be able to provide folks with access.
Yeah. And I think, George, the thing that we're starting to change, I think, in our corporate and social responsibility is it's not just about donation and money. It's about helping to help themselves and build sustainable change so that we can actually, to your point, it's not just about companies, now making money with customers. It's actually about building an economic environment, quite frankly, that allows people to continue to grow and they can flourish. And that helps us step out of, impoverishment and poverty. It helps build generational wealth that has been, sort of missing in many of the communities. And so, I think there's just a huge opportunity beyond just what companies will get out of it. I think broadly the economy benefits, quite frankly, because we're actually making a change for the better that's helping everyone
100%.
Ultimately help themselves.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so as you're sitting at Splunk, you're vice president for worldwide channels and alliances. It's a big role. What are you most sort of enthusiastic about? There's so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
What makes you go, oh my gosh, I love this? What is it? What is that?
Well, so I have now been at Splunk for about a year. I left Microsoft after about 18 years. And one of the things that I was really excited about Splunk focuses on digital resilience and security and observability, ensuring basically that companies can protect essentially the information that they need to continue to, service their customers, internal employees, et cetera. I always have been focused on the SDG goals, as you know. And I think, we all need to continue to focus on there, and, certainly sustainability and access and, the digital divide is one. But what has emerged from this that's very interesting in my connection with Splunk now is that we're now facing a data divide. And so you're going to hear me talk a little bit about this more at our summit tomorrow. But the thing that I'm getting really passionate about now is we're now on the road to creating that infrastructure and access. Now we have a different challenge, which is data and the insights and AI that's been coming out. And we sort of all are been, I would say, almost, my mother is asking me about AI. My kids are showing me what ChatGPT is, created in terms of, a resume. I mean, it's all that data is everywhere. Well, again, if you think about first the digital divide and now the data divide, who has the access to the data and who doesn't? And the people who have access to data can make smarter insights. They can make better decisions. They can actually, improve their lives, but not everyone has that. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's an opportunity that has emerged through this whole growth of AI that is now sort of pervasive in our daily lives. It used to be maybe more of a company or a commercial sort of thing, and all of a sudden it's with all of us now. And so it's actually perpetuated a bigger problem because the data is continuing to grow and grow and grow.
Right.
But access to that is still very, very limited. And so Splunk is very much committed to helping solve the data divide. And so I'm taking my expertise and my passion around helping really find root cause and building out sustainable change. And I think this is where we're headed next. And so I'm working very closely with Splunk to do that.
And so there you go. That's what I'm talking about. That's leadership. That's setting the tone. That's setting the tone. We've had a lot of conversations over the years, thousands of interviews. And what rises to the top, I believe, in talking to global leaders like yourself, is always that tone setting, the belief that there is a very clear path to a solution. But you can't even begin to think about a solution unless you know what the problem is.
Right.
And you've put your finger on the pulse of the problem, and in this case being the data divide.
Yeah.
Like, who gets access to that data?
Right. And I think the thing for all of us as we build out these strategic partnerships here at the summit and of course across the globe is we have to sort of take these one step at a time and break these down so that we can make actionable change. And I think part of it is there's so much we could be doing and so much we have to be thinking about. You almost get a little paralysis on how do you get after something that is so big and so hard and takes so many years, and how do you not give up and how do you pursue forward and how do you show back to investors in the market and the board that the work you're doing is actually going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And that comes down to breaking down those goals into very specific things that we can take action. And that's
there's no one that can do it better than you, Gretchen.
Oh.
I mean, I'm just telling you right now, I've witnessed that leadership and that commitment to change, the commitment to partnerships, because what you said earlier is so fundamentally true. And it's true for government. The US government can't do anything on its own.
Right.
The global superpower, the United States, can't do it on its own. A company like Microsoft can't do it on its own.
That's right.
No. And what's come up over and over again is the fact that these companies and entities are really people.
Yes.
And talent and experience and commitment and empathy and all the things that roll up into what you're talking about.
Right. And I think, you're making a really good point, which is you think of all the people, whether that's in the government or in the private sector, they are people. They are part of a community. They have heritage. They have local experiences. They have lived experiences that are connected all through the globe. And so, I think you make just a really good point, which is we need something that's bigger than ourselves to be able to go drive. It's fulfilling as an individual, it's fulfilling as a company. And I think it is something that, when you look at service, it is something that ultimately makes companies more productive because the people that are in those companies are fulfilled on driving sort of these changes. So,
well, I can see why Splunk is doing well. And I know why you're doing well and you're so excited is because you have a North Star.
Yes.
And you have a solution set and you believe in partnerships.
Absolutely.
It's critical. What is your call to action for our global audience?
I think, there's a couple of things. We started to delve into it, George, just a little bit. I think the first thing is you need to come together. So where is your superpower? Who are you connecting with? And how do we sort of bridge our experiences and then go, deliver this to the 2030 agenda? But the second thing I think, again, is where I talked about is we can't do it all. Not one person can do it all. We know we need partnerships, but clarity on North Star and how we're going to break down so that we can build action. And I think that's the most important thing for this audience here, because we can talk a lot about these issues, and we certainly do. And we shine a light on a lot of things that we need to be able to work on. But how do we come together and take that next step, that next small action that's going to essentially snowball into change? And so that's what I would just encourage us as an audience is, hey, the big challenges, as you had mentioned, it's very hard to change the world. And so what can you change today? What can you change today?
I love that.
Yeah.
What can you change today?
Yeah.
Maybe not even for tomorrow, but for today. What can you change right now? How do we find out more about what you're doing at Splunk?
Just please go visit me. I'm actually through LinkedIn, Twitter at O'Hara, but go visit Splunk at splunk.com, and you'll be able to download basically the Data Divide white paper, as well as understanding what digital resilience really means and how Splunk is contributing, quite frankly, back into the global community for change.
Leadership Defined, Gretchen O'Hara, Splunk. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.